All right, let's go over lesson 7.1, ratios and proportions. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers, and usually it's just a fraction. So let's jump into example 1. If you have 8 boys and 12 girls, let's write the ratio of numbers of boys to girls. So I'm going to start here with the fraction. So that's 8 to 12. Now we're going to have to simplify that, so that just reduces down to 2/3. If you decide to use a colon, it's just 2, then the colon, then the 3. Or if you use words, it's 2 to 3. And all of them are perfectly acceptable. When you do example 2, it says the ratio of the width to length in a rectangle is 2 to 3. If the perimeter of the rectangle is 40, find the width and length of the rectangle. Okay, so I know there's a lot of information here. Let me talk you through this. So I drew a picture of a rectangle, and I know from the directions, the length is 2 and the width is 3, but the perimeter is 40. Now the perimeter is all the way around. So if you add 2, 3, 2, and 3, it's not 40. So this thing is increasing and getting bigger all at the same scale, at the same rate. So I need to find what that number is. So I'm going to put x next to the 2 and the 3 and add them all together. So if you look over here, I have 2x plus 3x plus 2x plus 3x equals 40. So when you add up all the sides, it equals your total. So if you add up everything on the left side, you get 10x. Meanwhile, the right side stays 40. And when you divide, you get 4. Now, you have to make sure you always go back and reread the question. And it says, find the width and length of the rectangle. So you have to go back and plug in the 4. So it's 2 times 4, which is 8. And the width is 3 times 4, which is 12. And that is your final answer. And you can check your work. So if you were to add up for your perimeter 8 and 12, you get 40. So you know your answer is correct. All right, so let's try this next one. And here, let's get rid of a couple things. This is the ratio of boy koalas to girl koalas is 3 to 4. If there are 35 koalas, how many are boys? Now, I always like to label. So notice I put the B and the G here for boys and girls. This is my total. So I'm going to take my ratio and put an X next to each one. So I have 3X plus 4X, and it equals 35. So 3X and 4X is 7X, and then divide and get 10. Now, it says how many are boys. So you go back up here where you have it labeled. You know the 3 is referencing how the ratio of the boys. So 3 times the 5 that you just found is 15. So that's your final answer. So again, you're always going to take your number they give you in your ratio, put a variable next to it, and equal your total. So on this one, you have to read it carefully to see that the sum of the angles of a triangle, which we all know is 180, and it has an extended ratio of 1 to 2 to 3 because we know there are 3 angles of a triangle. So I'm going to take the 1, 2, and 3 and put a variable next to them because it's all going to grow at the same rate. And it equals 180 because the angles have a total of 180 degrees. So 6x equals 180, so x is 30. Now, if the directions say find the measure of each angle, so that means you have to plug the 30 back in. So 1 times 30 is 30, 2 times 30 is 60, 3 times 30 is 90. And that's your final answer to find the measure of each angle. The athletic team needs to purchase new uniforms. The ratio of small, medium to large is 4 to 6 to 9. So notice how I labeled them, small, medium, and large. Now I need a total. Right here, it says the total is 266. How many will be small? So I'm going to take the 4, 6, and 9 and put an X next to them and make it equal to my total, which is 266. And 4 and 6 and 9 added together is 19. And when you divide by 19, you get 14. Now, you're going to have to plug it back in. So we know small is 4, so 4 times 14 is 56. Medium is 6 times 14, which is 84. and large is 9 times 14, which is 126. So all of these are set up very, very similar. Now we're going to transition now to some proportions. And proportion is just when two ratios are equal. And when you were in algebra and pre-algebra, you cross-multiplied to solve those proportions. And it's very similar to that here. Whenever I give you your original proportion, we can do a few things to it and it still stays true. Now, first is we could flip these. So instead of A over B, I can write B over A. Instead of C over D, I can flip it and make it D over C. And it stays true. Whenever you cross multiply, you're still cross multiplying the same numbers. Notice it's A times D, and here it's A times D, B times C, and B times C. So it works. You're allowed to do that. All right, next one. Instead of A over B, I have A over C. So they're kind of going across like this. And so I have B over D, and here's B over D. Again, always just check, are you still cross-multiplying the same numbers? A and D, and over here's A and D. So you know it's going to work. Now this is the weird one. Now I started with A over, I jumped to number 4. A over B and C over D. So what I'm doing is I'm essentially just adding 1 to both sides. So if I add 1 to the left and I add 1 to the right, I'm allowed to do that. Now I need a common denominator. So my denominator on the left is B, so it remains a B. But I need something in the numerator up here. So B over B is 1. Okay, so that works. If my denominator is D, I leave it as a D. I need something in the numerator. That one simplified equals 1. So D over D equals 1. So what's happening? Whenever you add, the denominators stay the same. So notice here it's a B, and way over here it's a D. But your numerators, you just add them together. So it's A plus B. A plus B. Over here it's D. And on top, add them together, C plus D. So that's what's happening. We're taking whatever the denominator is and we're adding it to the numerator. We're taking the denominator and adding it to the numerator. It's kind of weird, but it's really not so bad. If you look at this example here, I'm taking the Q and adding it to the top. And so that means you're going to take the 8 and add it to the top to get 13 over 8. Here, I take the B, add it to the top, take the 4 and add it to the top. And so that's how you get 7 over 4. Now the one that I skipped is the one that should probably make the most sense to you. Whenever you cross multiply, A times D is AD, and B times C is BC. So let's go ahead and jump to these. There we go. So use the proportion A over B equals 4 over 5 to complete each statement. Okay, so I have 5 over 4, and so they're just flipping these. So you're going to flip these to get B over A. All right, so this is where you add to the top. So I'm going to take the 5 and add it to the top. So 4 and 5 is 9. On the third one, A over 4, so we're going to cross. So you're going to say B over 4. And then the last one's when you cross multiply, 5 times A, and then you're going to do the other direction, which is B times 4, or 4B. All right, so if they ask you to write 4 true proportions, they're giving you the first one. And I just looked at the diagram to plug in the information. So instead of MN, I replaced it with the 8. Instead of RS, I replaced it with the 10, and so on. So there are 4 things that we were just taught to do. So this is the given one. I was taught that I could flip them upside down. So instead of 8 over 10, I put 10 over 8. I did that to both sides. And then we were also taught, instead of going like down like 8 over 10, I could go across and do 8 over 4. And that's what I did over here. Now the last one is where you add. So we have to always go back to the original when you do this. So you take your denominator, and I just erased too much. Take your denominator and you add it to the top, which is what they did to get the 18. So you're going to take the x and add it to the top to get 4 plus x over x. All right, let's solve each proportion. Let's cross multiply. So when I cross multiply these, I get 9 times 6 equals 24x. And you're solving for x, so I divide by 24 to get 2.25. Again, you're going to cross multiply. 6 times y equals 9 times 4. And divide by 6 to get 36. Now this is the tricky one. So whenever you see, if you have a binomial, that means you have like an x plus or minus a number. You're going to have to put like a parenthesis around it and distribute that. So 6 times x and 6 times 3. So I get 6x plus 18. When you multiply the other direction, you get 8x. So let's solve it by subtracting 6x to get 2x, and then divide by 2 to get 9. Now we're going to change gears a little. These problems, the last two, they don't have a total. So we're going to solve these using ratios and proportions. So they give you the first proportion, AB over BC equals 2/5. So I like to write it as a fraction. I really don't like the colon. Now they also tell you that BC is 40. So I just crossed it out and I put the 40. So let's cross multiply, which I did here. 2 times 40 equals 5 times AB. So that's 80 equals 5 times AB. Now I'm solving for AB, so that means you're dividing by 5 to get AB is 16. So notice you're going to do this completely different from the top because this one doesn't give you a total. It's just two ratios that are equal, which means it's a proportion. Your last one, it's a rectangle, and the ratio of the lengths is 4 to 3. I highly, highly suggest that you label length to width because whenever they give you the width, you need to know where to place it. So width is in the denominator, so the 42 goes down here. To find the length, you're going to just put an x up here and cross multiply. So when I did that, you can see my work here. I cross multiplied to get 168 divided by 3 to get the length of 56. All right, that is it for today. Please message if you have any questions or join a help session.